What does freedom mean to you? Does it mean the freedom to choose? The freedom to have a family and raise your kids according to your own values? What about living a wild, adventurous life, experimenting with music, relationships, or art? What does freedom really mean? What if freedom meant something that only a few Americans still understood? What if it meant that your choices and your values were set by you, rather than by some politician in a far-off capital? Some people think we're only free to choose to live exactly how they live, by their moral code, or their narrow worldviews. But if liberty means anything, it means that you, and you alone, have the power to exercise your rights to which the laws of nature and nature's God granted you. It's time to put these principles back into action. It's time to restore the American dream, activate in our communities, and take our country back. It's time to wake up, America. Good morning. It's time to rise in freedom. It's 7:01 in Jefferson City, Missouri. Welcome to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Happy Friday. Thanks so much for joining us live here on the show. Glad to have you all here for our final show of the week, for our very first week. It's been a very exciting week, and I've certainly been delighted to see all of the positive response that we've gotten from people all over the country who have been tuning in to watch the Wake Up America show. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's get things going. The first topic today, the death of Queen Elizabeth, the longest reigning monarch in British history. We will discuss her life and her legacy. Joining me this morning at 7:22 a.m. Central Time, Anang Mittal, also known as Indian Bra on YouTube, will be joining us to talk about her about life in India under the British Crown. Scott Faughn will join me this morning at 8 o'clock to discuss the upcoming special session here in the state of Missouri, the possibility of tax cuts, as well as a roast of an elected official happening next week here in the state of Missouri that he's putting on. Should be a great interview. We'll talk to him this morning at 8 o'clock. And my favorite interview of the day, I'm so excited for, not to disparage any of the others, but my good brother Justin, my brother Justin Petersen will be joining us on the phone today at 8:30. And we will be discussing cultural Marxism in the arts. And I'm looking forward to talking to him about the pointless standing ovation. How many times have you gone to a live show and at the end, after this very sort of, well, you might say mediocre performance, everybody stands up to give them a standing ovation? It's the participation trophy for the theater world. We'll talk about that with my brother, Justin Petersen. But before we get to all of those topics, something that I'd like to share with you yesterday. For some reason, let's go to Twitter weirdness first of all. For some reason yesterday, I posted a photograph of this, and it got everybody talking online. This is a picture. If you can see us right now, we're live at wakeupamericashow.com. If you're listening to the audio podcast later, you'll just have to imagine it. A giant hornet's nest appeared on the outside of our home. You can kind of see down there in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, this hornet's nest. And I posted this picture yesterday saying, this popped up on my house. What do? And I mean, professional wrestlers on Twitter were retweeting this just a picture of a hornet's nest and, saying, kill it with fire. Some people were saying that they're friendly, poke it with sticks. Some people were saying that the hole that you see down there is like a telescope. You look in one end. And other people were giving us all sorts of advice about what to do with it. Some people were questioning my manhood because my wife decided to call the pest control experts to come and take it away today. But yeah, definitely some frightening looking wasps. And I learned a lot about wasps yesterday. Apparently there's all kinds of different wasps. Some of them are yellow jackets. Some of them are murder hornets. Some of them are bald face wasps. Never even heard of these things before, but somebody was telling me yesterday that the bald face wasps are apparently the kind of wasp that will remember who you are. I was reading up some really creepy stuff about these wasps. So, you know what? I decided not to take a risk that these are wasps that are going to remember who I am and try and murder me at night. Or what if they're murder hornets? Well, so, So yeah, we're calling Steve's Pest Control today to come out today to take care of the murder hornets. And we've got a whole bunch of other wasps too that we need to get rid of. So anyways, hilarious. Check it out on Twitter if you can. It's very funny. Everybody was commenting on it yesterday. You can find it over at my Twitter at AP for Liberty. That's AP, the number 4, AP for Liberty. You can see it popping up there on the screen, in and out, and not quite perfect, just like me and a lot of things. And just like Queen Elizabeth, I was reading a book last night to share with you some of the things that I might have found in it. And this is a great book that I highly recommend to my listeners. It's called The Politically Incorrect Guide to the British Empire. Now, I know this doesn't have really many sections in here about the Queen. It's more about British history in general. But I found the opening, one of the recommendations for this book by Dinesh D'Souza quite interesting. I'm going to read this intro to the book here for you. He said, as someone who grew up in India, my friend Anang Mittal will be joining us here in a few minutes to talk about his life in India. But Dinesh D'Souza says, as someone who grew up in India, I often hear people ask, what have the British done for us? Until I read this book, I didn't have the full answer, and here is the answer. Apart from roads, railways, ports, schools, a parliamentary system of government, rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, the rule of law, and the English language, nothing. Reminds me a little bit of that Monty Python sketch. What have the Romans ever done for us? Well, they did, bring order here. The only people who could bring order in a place like this, right? Okay, well, apart from order, what have the Romans ever done for us? Well, he brought the wine. They did bring the wine. Yes. The aqueduct, sanitation, right? So we'll talk about the life of Queen Elizabeth now. I pulled up some interesting facts from her yesterday when I was reading about her life and legacy. And I learned quite a bit. Queen Elizabeth was born April 1926. She was the longest reigning monarch ever in Britain. As queen, she was served by 15 British prime ministers, including Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, and more recently, Boris Johnson. The Queen, her favorite dogs were corgis. She even invented a new breed of dog when her corgi mated with a dachshund belonging to her sister, and it created a new kind of dog called the Dorgie. Pretty funny name. She was the only person in the United Kingdom allowed to drive without a license. The privileges of reigning in the monarchy. And she actually did keep driving even in her later years. Queen Elizabeth II had 2 birthdays, her actual birthday, the 21st of April, and her official birthday, which was held on a Saturday in June when the weather is better. Must be nice. My birthday is in February, and the weather is usually terrible, and no one comes to my birthday parties except for, just the very few people who love you. But you know what? Maybe that's just how it should be. I don't need to have a birthday in the summer so that all the people can come out and celebrate me. I'm celebrated every morning here on the show. Her birthplace is now a fancy Cantonese restaurant called Hakkasan. She sent her very first email in 1976 before pretty much all of us, and published her first Instagram post in 2019, pretty much after all of us. She had many hobbies, including horse riding, pigeon racing, and football. She became a homeowner at 6 years old, must be nice, when the people of Wales gifted her a house in the grounds of Windsor's Royal Lodge. It was named, there's no way I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Ebuthenbach. This is the English language, by the way. Ebuthenbach, Bwthyn. The letter, no idea, means little cottage in Welsh. In her lifetime, Queen Elizabeth II sent around 50,000 Christmas cards. She owned an elephant, 2 giant turtles, a jaguar, and a pair of sloths. She made her first radio broadcast in October of 1940 during the Second World War. And on a recent low-key trip to Scotland, she met some American tourists while walking. When the tourists asked if she lived locally, she mentioned that she had a house nearby. And when asked if she'd ever met the Queen by the tourist, she simply pointed at her security guard and said no. But he has. Very funny. And of course, the reaction to the death of the Queen yesterday was, as you might say, mixed. I'll give you my take on it here in just a moment, but one of the receptions was from a Carnegie Mellon professor who apparently wished excruciating pain on Queen Elizabeth, that she would suffer and die. Of course, this is a professor. You have to be tenured to be able to keep your job and say things like this. A professor at Carnegie Mellon University said that I heard the chief monarch of a thieving, raping, genocidal empire is finally dying. May her pain be excruciating. The Twitter post came, of course, as the reports circulated that the 96-year-old monarch died. And the tweet was retweeted and liked over 10,000 times on Twitter in just a few hours. Of course, there was a lot of pushback from that. But what was interesting was that you pretty much got about the same type of reaction from many libertarians online. And I'm not sure how I feel about that one. On the one hand, she was a monarch, and as a, small R Republican myself, I don't fancy monarchs in any way, shape, or form. And, certainly the British crown is the one that we threw off. On the other hand, Britain for, quite some time, certainly all of my lifetime, and since the War of 1812 almost, or at least after the War of 1812, the the British people have been allies of the people of the United States. They were our allies in World War II, and certainly I think our interests are aligned in quite some way. And Queen Elizabeth was no Hitler. Queen Elizabeth was no Mussolini. She was not a thieving, raping, genocidal dictator in the same vein as someone like a Joseph Stalin. So I don't think that those kind of comparisons are fair, and I don't think that they're apt. And so I won't speak that way of a woman who I think was admirable in many ways, right? You can't change the circumstances of your birth. And I think that she is a woman who did wonderfully with the hand that she was dealt in life. During the post-war austerity measures, she served during World War II very honorably and admirably, and she was, I would say, quite a favorable leader in her country. And there's room for people to disagree, and there are criticisms to be made, and I won't stand in the way if people want to do that. But I don't see the benefit in copying leftists in their view on this one. And I'm really curious to hear what my friend Anang Mittal is going to say on this subject. He's going to be joining us here in just a few moments. But before we get to Anang, I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts are on Queen Elizabeth. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. The text lines are open. You can text at 573-319-1586. I'd love to hear from you your thoughts about the death of Queen Elizabeth. She was quite an interesting person. She was fluent in French, and she always wore brightly colored outfits. So every time you would see pictures of her in the later years, you see her in shades of bright pink or yellow or neon green, and people would say, well, why is she wearing those things? Well, it's because she was so tiny that in order for people to be able to see her, in order to stand out in a crowd, she would wear these really brightly colored outfits so that people could catch a glimpse. She was pretty short, so she wore neon and pastel so that people could see her. When she was at the castle in the morning, she was woken up every day by a bagpiper playing under her window every morning at 7:30. Apparently, the bagpiper would play for a full 15 minutes. I think that would definitely wake me up and get me out of bed and get me going. Apparently, another interesting little story, the Queen apparently had a glass of champagne every night, and in the morning, she started off the day with a gin cocktail. So I don't know if she continued to do that as her health was failing, but I thought that was quite fascinating. The Queen had at least 30 godchildren, including Princess Diana's brother, the Earl Spencer. When she was 18 years old, she joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service. She started training as a truck driver and was a mechanic in order to play her part in the war that began when she was 13 years old. She's the only female member of the British royal family to have served in the military. What do you think about it? Another listener texted in and said that you nailed it. She did not ask to be born as a princess. Yeah. So we can't do much about the circumstances of our birth, but the decisions that we make are what will define us. Yes, she did not ask to be born royal. She was often the voice of reason in a crazy world. Yep. She was an ambulance driver. Another listener texted in. Elizabeth was an ambulance driver during the war. Probably the last time she was useful, someone says, but I'll give her credit for that. I did, however, enjoy and do recommend the film, The Queen. That's a great recommendation. I'd love to hear from you as well on the death of Queen Elizabeth. We're going to talk to my friend Anang Mittal here in just a couple of minutes. You can text the show at 573-319-1586 with your thoughts on that. We've got lots of great guests, lots of great stories today. Haven't been able to tease even everything just yet. And we're going to go to a commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to talk to my friend Anang Mittal, who is from India, about the life and about the life of Queen Elizabeth, as well as the history of the British Crown in India. We'll be back with more of the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
It's morning again in America. Our country is prouder and stronger and better.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning. It's time to rise in freedom. Austin Petersen here at 7:20 a.m. in Jefferson City, Missouri. Thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericaShow.com. My next guest joining me now is a former Capitol Hill staffer and an Indian immigrant to the United States. His name is Anang Mittal, and he's joining us now on the phone. Good morning, Anang.
Morning, Austin. How's it going?
It's going great, Anang. I'm glad to have you here. I'm excited to introduce you to my audience, and I'm glad that I have your expertise here and your knowledge of British and Indian history. Now, you were, like I said, an immigrant to the United States from India, so you know quite a bit about the British mandate in India during that time. Of course, Queen Elizabeth. Well, I guess I'll have to have you fill in the details. But Queen Elizabeth II, she was the queen for a brief period while India was under the British Crown. Is that correct?
That's not correct technically. So Elizabeth became Queen of England in 1952 when her father, George VI, passed away because of lung cancer, I believe. And India had become independent in 1947 when the Clement Attlee Labour government decided to quit the Raj and sort of give up India. And India became a sovereign state. So George VI was still the head of the Indian Commonwealth because they made India independent as a Commonwealth, much like Canada and Australia still are today. And then in 1950, India became a fully sovereign state. So the King of England was no longer the head of state. But the Queen Elizabeth became the queen after she was no longer head of the Indian or her father was no longer the head of the Indian Commonwealth.
And that's why I bring and that's why I bring experts like you on to ensure that we get our facts straight here. Anang, tell us a little bit about your thoughts about Queen Elizabeth. I know last night you said you didn't have necessarily any strong opinions of her, but there was quite a lot of people online yesterday, and one professor from Carnegie Mellon who was talking about that she hoped that she suffered as she died, and there apparently is a lot of hatred around the world for Queen Elizabeth II. Why do you think that is?
To do with people. So the professor, I believe she has Kenyan heritage, and there was a counterinsurgency operation in Kenya during the 1950s where the British the empire. So there are feelings, and I don't think she was actually there, right? People remember that she's poor and all that. But it's understandable that there's this sort of anti-colonial feeling, and there's been a lot of sentiment about how the evils of European colonialism over the last few years. And so naturally, when a figure of, from that bygone era dies, then there's going to be a lot of people who are sort of, have a lot of bitterness and rage and have feelings of revenge and vengeance. I think that those are misplaced here because she really was this sort of transcendental figure. She stood above politics. She never sort of said, "Oh wow, the British Empire, what an amazing thing," right? She never sort of made a statement like that. She never really apologized for it either, which is understandable. But that really wasn't her job. Her job was to be sort of ideal of sacrifice and tradition and beauty. And I think that is really the feeling that people have. And I think even me, I don't look at her as a negative figure in the world. I think she was one of the more, you would say, one of the more revered figures of the 20th century. And that's really how people are probably going to remember her, as someone who stood above politics, stood above the nastiness of the age, of the modern age as well. And that's really the sad part of it. That's why people are sad that she's gone, because we're not going to see a person like that ever again. I think, again, I wish King Charles the best. I think he's probably going to be a bit more political. And like I said, it'll be a time before we see somebody like Queen Elizabeth again, even in the British Empire or the form of the British monarch.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Anang Mittal. He's a former Capitol Hill staffer, as well as an immigrant from India here to the United States. Now, another Indian immigrant by the name of Dinesh D'Souza had this to say about the British Empire's mandate in India. He says, here, apart from roads, railways, ports, schools, our parliamentary system of government, rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, the rule of law, and the English language, what did the British give to India? Well, nothing. How would you respond to Dinesh D'Souza when he talks about what the British did for countries like India?
Yeah. And, the British came and did all these amazing things. And I think you agreed that British colonialism, imbued a certain Western values that are, in operation still today. Many Indians speak English, and so it's the benefit of the country to have that connection. But I do think that, and it's not on the whole exactly a positive thing. I think pressing any native people's culture, language, and traditions is always going to have a lingering effect. And I think that's really where the people who aren't sort of super bitter and rageful are using politics of today to, make a big gain for themselves, and are using it to vent anger. I'm not on their side, so their vision of the British Empire, especially the British Raj in India, as it was called, is much more negative. There's an Indian politician who's sort of famous, who has literally given a speech at Oxford demanding reparations, right? So I'm not on that side, definitely. I think that's a little going too far. I think that the British Empire, when they came in, they did colonize India. They did, do away with the local traditions, with the native traditions, and they left us with some terrible legacy. So two main examples I would want to give are, one that's less known to people here is an incident called Jallianwala Bagh. And Jallianwala Bagh was a meeting place in Punjab. It's still in India today. It's a memorial now where a British general by the name of General Dyer came in with Indian troops and tried to disrupt a meeting that was basically a meeting of independent-minded people who were trying to convince the British to leave India. And he said that there was martial law in effect. So him and his troops came in and literally gunned down hundreds of people. There was a well in the center of the bog, and people literally jumped into the well to escape. And so it's one of the more famous incidents that was sort of the cause in the 1920s of the independence movement, where the British were seen as, uniquely vicious in having done this. And obviously the general said that he acted on his own, and it sort of became the symbol for what the British, that there was no longer this sense of comity and, harmony, that the British Empire was a force for good and was teaching Indians the right things. Because once you have a British general just shooting people left and right, civilians, that can no longer, and the British Empire, nor the Parliament, nor the Prime Minister have ever apologized for it. The Queen certainly did visit Jallianwala Bagh when she visited India in 1997, I believe. So that's, again, understandable from that side. She didn't apologize for it, but she did place a memorial wreath. And then the other incident that I would blame at the feet of the British, that is, again, for the worst parts of it, is the Indian partition. India was a country before the British came, and after the British came, the best parts of India were divided into two and given over to a country called Pakistan. And the scars of that are still present today. I grew up with people when I was growing up in India who had come from the Pakistani side, and they had left their homes and their entire belongings behind, with like jewelry thrown into their clothes. And they, that can be laid at the feet of the British, because the British decided that it was better to leave India divided than to work out, a plan where you didn't have to create taking the country into two.
The British did.
Those scars are still present today.
Well, it's kind of like what the British did in Iraq.
Multiple communities, multiple pieces of land for their own benefit. And colonial people might say, well, this clearly is why the British Empire is uniquely evil. But I can't say that. I don't think I'm going to go that far. I think that's saying too much. But I do think that certain things they did either geopolitically or out of their own desire. So Winston Churchill, said that, we have to protect the rights of the Muslim citizens. And people are like, they've been living here for hundreds of years. What rights are you, this is like sort of kind of creating, it's what's called divide and rule in India, that the British would come in, they would, take over the country or take over sort of communities, and they would empower one community and then sort of, divide a country that way. Because if you're awarding certain people and you're sort of putting down another group of people, and that makes it look like you're kind of, giving people certain favors. And that was really sort of one of the key hallmarks of colonialism, was called divide and rule.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's where, again,
we're speaking to Anang Mittal. He is an Indian immigrant to the United States, a former Capitol Hill staffer. Anang, you must be sort of like feeling split three ways in this discussion, simply, coming from India, but you also are a very patriotic American. And you and I have had many discussions in the past about, your love for, the country that you have chosen to be an American citizen. And, of everything that I know about you, you love the American tradition of the Constitution, and many of these rights that came out of the Constitution were part of a British tradition. So I wonder just, how do you feel personally as someone who, your mother country was, pillaged in a way from the British Empire, but what the British gave to your adoptive country in creating the United States are traditions that you love. Do you sometimes feel split three ways in this?
I'm not sure I feel split three ways. I think there's ways to sort of keep certain opinions without, sort of being sort of ideological about certain things. So I feel in this instance, certain places the British system worked, in certain places it didn't work, and in certain places people were motivated to make it work. So I think, definitely, because Americans don't look at Queen Elizabeth as, a descendant of George III, the evil King George III. I think a lot of Indians also don't look at Queen Elizabeth as like, well, clearly, here comes the empire all over again, So that's really how I look at it. And I think, give full credit to the Indian community. A lot of Indians have served in the British Armed Forces. A lot of them have been serving in the American Armed Forces. So I don't think a lot of Indian immigrants like me look at the Queen as sort of an evil figure. It's really depending on where you live. So if you're American, you share sort of those American values. And if you're in the UK, you look at her as your monarch. And so we don't tend to sort of be super ideological. It's really people back home who are politically minded or trying to make a name for themselves who sort of tend to go in that direction of like, well, clearly the British Empire is the exact cause for everything that's wrong with India to this day. And that's, again, where you kind of go, okay, a little too much, hopefully.
Anang, I love your reasoned opinions. You can find more of your reasoned opinions at your YouTube channel. I think you're Indian Bra on YouTube. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah, I have so many usernames and this and that. But yeah, my Indian channel is called Indian Bra. And I sort of comment on American politics, on all kinds of things. So the new Rings of Power episode is coming out. I'll certainly be commenting on that. So culture and politics is kind of my thing.
That's
for promoting that.
Absolutely. Indian Bra on YouTube. I recently watched one of his videos about colonialism. It's fascinating. You can find Anang Mittal on YouTube at Indian Bra. And Anang, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming on the show today. We appreciate you. Absolutely. Have a great weekend. Boy, that was good stuff. What did you think? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear from you and your thoughts on that interview with Anang Mittal. Again, you can text the show at 573-319-1586. One listener texted in, said, I've tried to wait until today to say anything, and I won't use vitriol, but perhaps it's time for the British to choose a new path. It is the 21st century, not the 12th. What do you think? Send me a text again at 573-319-1586. And when we get back from our commercial break, an interview with Maxim Lott to talk about some surprising findings from the COVID pandemic. We'll talk about all that and more on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct,
like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Austin's wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you?
I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul, made a big investment in chips just before Congress votes on a bill that would give $52 billion in subsidies and tax credits to the chip industry.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No. And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. Do not come. Do not come.
Have you ever received a royalty payment from a company that you later oversaw money going to that company?
I don't know as a fact, but I doubt it.
Well, here's the thing is, why don't you let us know?
Hi, and welcome to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. It's time to rise in freedom. Grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I've got a special guest here with a really great topic. He's an old friend of mine. We used to work together at the Fox Business Network, and his name is Maxim Lott. Maxim, good morning. Thanks for joining me on the program.
Hey, Austin. Good morning.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Glad to have you on the first debut week of the show, Maxim. And you've got a really great topic that I'd love to have you introduce to our listeners. The title of it is Deep Dive, the COVID Fudge Factor, a map of COVID data corruption and the COVID approach that worked. I said early on in the pandemic, back when I first started covering this, Maxim, that we were going to find out 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what worked and what didn't work. Sounds like you've narrowed in on something. Do you want to explain your thesis?
Yeah, so I've been spending a couple weeks putting all the data together, and I've kind of mapped out the whole world on how they've done in COVID cases on my Substack, Maximum Truth. And basically, so every government reports how many COVID deaths they've had. And if you look at the map of the world, it's like the U.S. did pretty bad. Africa did great. So there's some sketchy stuff. If you look at a map of the official government data, it's like Belarus did great. Russia did okay. But so we have a better data source now, which is just like the total deaths from all causes over the last 2 years. And if you look at that and look at the increase in deaths during COVID, you get a totally different picture. Where like countries like Russia had tons of deaths. This is before the war, and they didn't report them. And so basically what I've done is I've mapped out the difference between like the extra deaths that happened during COVID and like the deaths the government reported as COVID. And if you look at it, they're just really interesting things. Like Russia had 3 times as many deaths as they reported. Belarus had 8 times more. India had about 10 times more. So they reported 500,000 people died. It was really like 5 million. So lots of stuff like that. That's what I call the fudge factor. You can quantify how kind of dishonest or incompetent different governments have been. The U.S. seems to have undercounted cases by about 13%. So it is actually okay.
So you're looking at essentially at what you're calling the not just the fudge factor here, but excess mortality. So this is, for in layman's terms, this is basically, the number of deaths that were reported that are higher than the average deaths that country has. Is that correct?
Exactly. Like during COVID. So, basically in 2020, 2021, there were more than 1 million extra deaths in those years than there were in 2018, 2019. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at.
You wrote in your piece over here on your Substack, maximumtruth.substack.com. Great name, by the way. You said that in human cost, India is the most important with a 9.8 fudge factor. What does that mean?
Yeah, so basically they had about 9.8 times more deaths than their government reported as COVID deaths. So they're if you look at their official data, it's just useless. And in terms of being most important, it's just like they account for like something like a third of all global deaths. And they tried to do some ineffective lockdowns, kind of similar to what the U.S. did. It just didn't work at all for them.
You also wrote in this piece about the Australia and New Zealand cases. What happened with these two countries? I mean, they are islands.
Yeah. So those are really interesting cases because, so there have been a lot of ineffective lockdowns. Like we know the cases in the U.S. Where small businesses were closed, sometimes at the same time as Gavin Newsom was getting dinner somewhere or whatever. So it wasn't effective. Like it wasn't a serious approach in any way. And many countries around the world were like this. But there are a few countries that were like, we're going to stop COVID, period. And they actually did. So Australia and New Zealand are some of these countries. And
that goes against my right-wing narrative. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, that's what the data show.
Okay.
But I mean, the first thing they did is they had strict travel bans. Like even Australians had a lot of trouble getting in and out of the country. I mean, this is like kind of an anti-freedom law, but look at the data. They had the travel bans. They had lockdowns. Yeah, they were arresting people for like going outside at the wrong time. This is not a libertarian pro-liberty thing, but they kept COVID out of the country until everyone was vaccinated. And then when they opened up, cases skyrocketed. They've had more cases than the U.S., but they've had almost no deaths because they're vaccinated. Omicron is slightly less deadly. And it worked in terms of reducing deaths. So this is just a fact that we should be aware of. If you can control your borders and control, lockdowns, if government really takes it seriously, they can stop COVID, and a few did. So the next question is whether it's worth it. But
and now that's the big question, right? Because you, at the bottom of your piece here, you talk about the cost benefit analysis. And, it's one of those questions that we ask ourselves in terms of gun control, something your dad has studied quite extensively, is this question of, if you got rid of all guns, all gun crimes would cease, right? I mean, you're talking about a fairy tale here, but I mean, the question is it worth it for people to be able to defend their own lives if that means that there's going to be some negative consequences to that freedom, right? So, if you apply that to COVID, you could ask the question, well, is my freedom, is your death worth me having a little bit more freedom? So it's kind of, the question is who dies, right? So, I mean, that's a tough one. What did you kind of conclude in terms of a cost benefit analysis on this?
Yeah, so I crunched some of the numbers to try to put it into somewhat like meaningful terms. And basically, if you, so COVID, of course, kills mostly older people. And if you look at like the life expectancy, how many years like were left on average for people who are dying, it's like the overall number is that each person in the United States, on average, lost like 2 weeks of lifespan because of COVID. So if COVID could somehow be prevented, like everyone in the U.S. would in some sense get 2 weeks of life.
2 weeks
extra.
Yeah. It's not much, but I mean, like anybody who's getting ready to die would be like, would you like to live 2 weeks longer?
True.
They'd all say, yeah, I'd like to live another 2 weeks, please.
Yeah. And of course, in real life, it's unevenly distributed. So most people aren't going to lose any life. Some people just tragically cut short. So that kind of sucks as well. But yeah.
But then you ask a good question here in your piece where you say, would you have preferred to live through a total travel ban and total lockdowns like Australia's to save yourself 10 to 15 days? I'll be honest. This is just my personal take, Maxim. I don't know about you, but like not having worn masks everywhere I go every day, going out for a walk the last 2 years, I'm not, I don't know if 10 or 15 extra days of life necessarily would have been
with you.
Worth it. I think I would probably allow that to be shaved off at the very end of my life just for, the sake of being able to breathe.
Yeah. I'm certainly in the same boat. And probably most Americans are. I don't know about Australians, but America was really never close to having the kind of total lockdowns that would have been, or even border control that would have been needed to keep COVID out. But yeah, I agree. Like 2 weeks is not, worth not having freedom for 2 years. Yeah.
So at the end of this, you say here that, your conclusions are, and this is not going to make this audience happy. You say vaccines did work to prevent death. Now, you can state that conclusively.
Yeah, because you look at just the differences between countries and the timing. It's like, what's the difference between Australia and New Zealand and the US? The Australia and New Zealand have had more COVID cases, but they've had less than 1/6 of the deaths. So it just, that's exactly how the vaccine was like advertised. That's its efficacy rate for preventing death. It does not prevent cases, but it does prevent death. So I think it's as conclusive as anything.
Okay. Well, I myself got vaccinated and, I always believed that it should be voluntary, but I mean, this,
absolutely,
this confirms my biases, but perhaps not my right-wing audience. However, the second thing that you said here is highly offensive to me. Maxim, highly sensitive. You say lockdowns and restrictions were very effective only when combined with near total travel bans and when kept in place until full vaccination. It's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit about the people who are like, fascism works. It's in fact, Mussolini did keep the trains running on time.
Yeah, so it's right. I mean, it is kind of pointing that out. I mean, it can work. For most countries, it did not. Like the United States tried many lockdowns, and it just didn't work because they were half-hearted measures. Like Peru did huge lockdowns, didn't prevent cases. Almost every country tried some things. Even like Russia had business closures and stuff. Didn't do anything. So it was only these couple countries that did take an almost fascist kind of approach. China has also kept out COVID with like a totally fascist approach. So I don't know. I think as people who care about freedom, sometimes if we're being honest, we just need to admit sometimes government can do something. It doesn't mean it's worth it, but
that's really the point.
China's keeping COVID out.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the question really then is the trade-off then. So the last couple of points here that you say in your conclusion, it's not clear that even the most effective anti-COVID restrictions pass a cost-benefit test when it comes to freedom versus safety. I think that's the main point here is that if you're going to live in a free world, there's going to be some danger involved. The question is, how do we sort of calculate that cost-benefit analysis? It sounds like that's what you've attempted to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you don't see this analysis in the media at all, really. It's just either, vaccines are untested and dangerous, or it's rational middle ground analysis. So that's what I'm trying to do on my Substack.
It's a great Substack, Maxim. You were a great researcher for Stossel back in Fox Business. I'll never forget working together with you. And I've always appreciated your take on things. You can read Maxim's Substack by going to maximumtruth.substack.com. Maxim, is there anywhere else where people can follow you or read your work?
Twitter, it's Maxim Lott. I don't love Twitter, but that's a easy way to see my stuff.
That's it. Maxim Lott, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate your point of view. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Austin. Good talking.
Thank you very much. And thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. We'll be back with a very short commercial break.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun. Thank you very much.
Had enough yet? Do facts no longer matter? our lies to be encouraged instead of punished, this is not our inheritance. If truth no longer matters, we will not remain free for long. This is our generation's challenge, to defend our founders' hope that we the people could self-govern if we defend our right to get the facts. And right now, we're building the only defense of free people have, the facts, on every politician, every position they held, every statement they've made, every vote they've made, and any cash they've taken. It's the real history on those now pandering for your vote. There are hundreds of young people building our defense right now, and they need your help. We all have our passions, but as our ancestors knew, when events become so foul they threaten us all, we must stand and defend each other. Please, have our backs. Join us at votesmart.org.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
As the world faces the challenges of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Lions recognize that kindness matters now more than ever. And Lions and Leos are finding ways to continue to serve our communities, including ordering food delivery for healthcare workers, holding story time for children online, and providing surgical masks to medical professionals and first responders. Empowering us to do more, Lions Clubs International Foundation has provided nearly $2.5 million in grant funding for COVID-19 relief. And that support continues to grow. For more than 100 years, in times of need, Lions always find a way to help those around them. And after we emerge from this, we will be stronger than ever. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
We're back on the Wake Up America show at Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Thank you so much for joining us. It's time to rise in freedom. Looks like many of our interviews this morning went a little bit long, so this segment will be a little bit shorter. I'm excited, though, to introduce my next guest coming up here in just a few minutes. Scott Faughn, the publisher of the Missouri Times, will be joining us here at 8:03 this morning. Excited to have him in studio. And we've also got my brother, Justin Petersen, who's going to be joining us at 8:30 to talk about cultural Marxism in the arts, as well as the pointless standing ovation. So it's definitely going to be a great 8 o'clock hour. You don't want to miss that. We got some great text messages at 573-319-1586. Listener texted in and said, as Milton Friedman pointed out in Free to Choose, much of the suffering and slow development on India stems from protectionist policies that have had a lasting impact, even decades after his observation of modest government reforms. Yep, absolutely. Good point there. Another listener texted in and said, death and freedom over fascism and safety any day of the week. Amen, brother. Another listener, Tony Allegra, said that he just got a 24-hour Facebook suspension for my kill it with fire comment in chat. He was talking about the hornet's nest, for God's sakes. Tony says that is a shameless plug there, I guess, for Rumble. Yes, it is. We are streaming on Rumble, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and of course, if you ever see that we've been pulled down by the social media gods, you can always watch the show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. You definitely want to bookmark that in your favorites. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. All right, the legislature. No man's life, liberty, or property is safe while the legislature is in session. And they're coming in session. Missouri's legislative special session will be occurring next week here. Scott Faughn, the publisher of the Missouri Times, of whose illustrious building we are in right now, broadcasting from, will be joining us here in just about 5 minutes. We'll see you when we get back just after this commercial break at Wake Up America's show, with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericashow.com.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Didi's website. Now I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Didi made Frenchy bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Didi really likes it. Didi said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake. Yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes. You like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchy Bullshit. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchy Bullshit blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Any real-world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
A school district in southwest Missouri has recently brought back corporal punishment as a means of disciplining their students. If parents choose to opt into the new policy, it permits certified personnel employed by the school district to spank their children with a paddle. The new policy requires that students be subjected to physical punishment in private, accompanied by a witness also employed by the school district, and prohibits hitting children in the head or face. One father who has 2 daughters enrolled in this school district in Missouri, ages 8 and 6, chose to opt into the new policy and says that he thinks it will make students stop and think before acting out. The Food and Drug Administration yesterday approved a new round of COVID-19 booster shots without human testing. Instead, FDA officials are relying on data from mouse trials to prove the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines. The White House has been pushing for a fall booster campaign to begin this month in September, and because of the short deadline, vaccine makers have only had time to test the reformulated shots in mice, not people. This will be the first round of boosters distributed without human trials, and first shots could be administered as soon as next week. The agency uses a similar approval process with flu shots, which are updated each year without human testing to keep up with mutating flu viruses and are generally 40 to 60% effective. Meanwhile, coronavirus cases and hospitalizations have both fallen steadily throughout the month of August. And according to recent data, an average of 400 to 500 people in the United States a day are dying because of COVID-19, an average that is far lower than at most points during the pandemic. Fewer than half of the people in the United States have received a single booster shot.
Good morning. It's 8:06 in Jefferson City, Missouri. It's time to rise in freedom. Welcome to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Glad to have you here. Don't forget, you can text the show this morning at 573-319-1586. For those of you who are in the know in Jefferson City, we are broadcasting this show from an awesome studio that we were generously donated to us by the publisher of the Missouri Times, who's joining us right now, Scott Faughn in studio. Scott, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. So glad to have you. And I just got to say, Austin, congratulations on the setup and the look. It looks fantastic. I mean, I can't imagine how much work you've done to make this look as good as it does.
Well, we're glad to have you here, Scott, and I appreciate the kind words, and thank you very much for helping us to have such a great studio space. You've certainly been an integral part of it, and people are very grateful. If everybody in the chat right now could give a big thank you and a like to Scott Faughn, I'd really appreciate that. So
appreciate that very much.
Yeah,
very much.
So, Scott, you're kind of the man in the know with what's going on here in Jefferson City. I guess the legislature is going to be called back into session a little bit later than we had expected. What was the reason for the delay, and what's it all about?
Oh, it's like most things in politics, it's all personal and petty. You've got a dynamic where that's just my own simple hillbilly white trash opinion, but the governor cares deeply about agriculture. He's an agriculture guy. He's a farmer himself. He comes from farm and stock, we'd say, in Wheatland, Missouri. There was tax credits that were put out there for economic development, right? So right now, if you want to start a Starbucks on Washington Avenue, right, you get a 6-year term for your tax credits. Somehow the suburban legislature, who does not value farming quite like us rural folks do, they decided that, a farmer in Webster County only needs 2 years for his ag tax credits. Well, that struck the old Polk County sheriff not quite well. So he decided to bring him back. And this is my opinion. I think he added the tax cut as a way to get the suburban. I mean, most of the state's problems are really the suburban people. They whine all day. They complain. Jesus Christ. So I think he thought he would do a tax cut so the suburban folks would just shut up for an hour or two. Well, of course, never happens. They just never shut up, ever, never, ever. The best way the state used to be ran is the rural folks, and it usually was African Americans in the cities, would run the state, and we would just never let the suburban people in the room. We really messed up when the Republicans took over. The suburban folks are a chunk of that party. And instead of shoving them down in the basement, in the cellar, and locking the door, they let them out and their opinions. And their opinion, you know what their opinion is every damn day? Whine. They just, you've just never seen anything like it. So, anyhow, the governor thought he could placate him with this. And now the MASBA tax credits, the ag credits have been worked out. That deal's pretty well been done. but you've got this tax cut. So now you've got the Senate who's like, well, you've got a lot of businessmen in there. And they're like, why don't we just take a beat here? Why don't we just step back, cut taxes a conservative amount? Then next year, because here's the thing about inflation, the state is a very good customer, usually buy things on biannual contracts, right? So if your revenues are a percentage of sales, well, right now, things cost more. That percentage is higher. But at some point, your expenses are going to rise too. And when your expenses rise, a W-2 Republican, like a House Republican, most of them are W-2 Republicans. I'm not even sure why you'd be a Republican if you had a W-2, but that's their perspective. They think, well, the revenues are up today, so you cut taxes today and you blow the bottom out of it and you're fine. They don't think about how inflation actually works. At some point, inflation works on, like, we're all seeing the expense side and our wages are going up a little slower. In government, it's the inverse. You're seeing your revenue because you get a percent of these sales. But when your expenses go up, which should be somewhat of a commensurate percent, right? People, they don't think about that part of it. Pardon me. So you've got a Senate that wants to come in around 550, 600 million. The House starts off at like they just want to in-state government, about $2 billion. Well, everybody rolls their eyes. That's the House, is what it is. And so then the governor came in at 700 million, which is, he's trying to be as suburban as he can be and not bankrupt the state and actually have because you're going to have, right now, they don't have an ability to put an emergency clause in. So whenever this bill is signed by the governor, it goes into effect 60 days later. So they don't have the ability to put that emergency clause in. In January, they most likely will. So there's some folks that want to say, let's try this again. And the truth is, the governor has done everything possible. He's met with all of them so many times. And I tell you what, can you imagine Mike Parson, successful farmer, former sheriff, governor of the state of Missouri, having to sit across the desk from, let's say, a Rob Vescovo, the speaker, an Uber driver who's declared bankruptcy, who I don't know what other job he has. But you're Mike Parson, a serious person, having to talk to this just clown. I mean, the only thing he's missing is the nose. And the truth of the matter is, can you imagine listening to someone tell you about economic development? I mean, to be candid with you, Austin, last year, I spent more money on spilt liquor in bars from Carthage to Caruthersville than Rob Vescovo made. He's an economic development expert.
Or if you're just tuning in right now, we're speaking to the publisher of the Missouri Times. We are in the Missouri Times building, broadcasting the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. If you want to send us a text, you can at 573-319-1586. Scott, I hear you've got a big roast of a legislator coming up here next Monday.
We may just change on the fly and do it about Vescovo. That'd be funny.
He's getting his roast right now, but what's this event you got coming up on?
Started getting his roast, I can guarantee you that.
You've got a big event coming up here in Jefferson City on Monday.
Monday night at the Soybean Association, we're going to roast Senator Caleb Rowden. I want to tell you, you talk about a target-rich environment. Caleb Rowden is a real statesman. He's a guy that really does try to find compromise. And he back in the day, he's a terrific musician, just a very talented guy. He was in a Christian rock band, which every time I hear Christian rock band, all I can think about is that South Park episode where Cartman got a double Murr album, and he would just take the words to the rock songs and put Jesus in them and stuff.
Yeah.
And so he had this hair. This hair was just, you can't even, it's all spiked off and stuff. So great. So awesome. You have the conservative caucus to make fun of about, which is obviously that's hilarious, the back and forth. I'm sure there'll be some discussion of Jim Lemke, which will be hilarious. And so then we've got a great lineup. So we get Senator Huff and Senator Rizzo. Travis Fitzwater, new senator from Cross River and Callaway County, is going to tell some jokes. I think we have Aaron Willard talked into it, the governor's chief of staff, but we'll see. A couple others in, but one of my favorites is Ron Richard, the old job creator from Jobland. He's going to come up and tell a few jokes and watch Rowden flap his gums. Ron's going to come up. Anything Ron says will be hilarious because he's like so not funny. He's hilarious. and
there's some people that are so not funny that they're funny.
So he goes all the way around the world from not funny to freaking hilarious. And it'll be great. And it just, we haven't seen him. If you've ever been to the Missouri State Capitol, it is one of the most beautiful government buildings that's ever been constructed. And if it wasn't for a real businessman like Ron Richard, the thing would have fell in the river. He's the one that forced them to tuck point it and to take there's a lake underneath it. And no one would have ever done that in a term limits era that wasn't a real statesman. He saved that capital. He's a true Missourian, and he's funny. Then we have a surprise roaster. I always do this. The session before last ended with Senator Schatz and Senator Rizzo almost in a it wouldn't have been a punching match. That would have ended quick for my man JJ. But Schatz came out at the end as a surprise guest. This year, if you can just imagine the one person who you would like to see roast Caleb Broughton, that's who's going to come out at the very end. Then, of course, at the end, we give our roasty a chance to give him hell, and then obviously we'll all give a portion of the proceeds to the charity of the Senator's Choice. I think it's a veterans organization in Columbia. We're going to have a heck of a good time. We might even drink a few Anheuser-Busch products.
Speaking of Anheuser-Busch, before we let you go, Scott, one question on the Missouri Senate race: Eric Schmidt versus Trudy Bush Valentine. Heir to the Bush fortune. Just out of curiosity, I mean, is she actually campaigning? Or is there any point to campaigning? I mean, like, isn't it just really a big waste of money here in a plus 10 red state?
Well, you have to keep in mind when she filed, you had the shot. I think probably even in the polls, it was tied, or Eric Grimes was doing very well. And Danforth had his puppet he had in the race. That there was an absolute mix that could have come together where there would have been a huge point to this, and it would have been a national race that everyone would have talked about. I mean, everything Eric Greitens does is interesting. But when the Republicans, I guess, what did he get, like less than a fifth of the vote? When the Republicans laughed him off, this race was over. And John Wood, the Danforth boy, he ended up backing out because it was just over. Now, I've interviewed Trudy Bush Valentine. Could not be a nicer person. And yes, she is hustling around the state. I'll tell you, she's making the rounds. Is there a point to it? Well, do I personally see a path for her to win this race? No, I don't. However, I mean, you get down, so there's a lot of state reps in new districts. You get that if it was someone that lost 80-10, right, or 80-20 or whatever, a lot of those races get pulled under the water too. If she goes out there and gets her 40 to 45% of the vote, that's going to help elect some folks down tickets, some county races and folks. So is there a point to it for the overall, can she win this race? I don't see a path to winning this race. Eric Schmidt's a tremendous politician, tremendous candidate, and I'll make you a bet right now. It's in a year from now. We sit over about 10 feet from here, and we'll have a beer. I think, to me, Roy Blunt should be on the Mount Rushmore of U.S. senators from the state of Missouri. You think Kit Bond, obviously, Thomas Hart Benton, then Symington Eagleton, maybe, but I don't think you can argue Roy Blunt should be there. I think Eric Schmidt was the closest thing this state could have elected in 2022 to Roy Blunt. And you need one real senator, because right now, you could be in a bad way if you don't send somebody good with our Senate delegation. It's not what you would call stellar. And I firmly believe we'll sit here a year ago from now, and even you'll have to be like, the old boy's done a good job. I think he'll take it seriously. I think he'll deliver Missourians' money back to them. I think he'll do some of the pay attention to me stuff, for sure. He always has. He's always done it pretty well. But at the end of the day, you can't compare him to Roy Blunt. That's not fair. But what I think you can say is he will be a senator in that mold that will actually care about this state and deliver you your money. I mean, right now, Austin, if not for Roy Blunt, this entire nation would have a choke point at the Roachport Bridge. You'd have traffic from Kingdom City to Odessa backed up. Roy Blunt got in there, brought the money home, there's some knuckles attached to some of those federal appropriations still. He changed the course of that. And you talk about freedom and liberty. How free is an old boy who has to sit in traffic 4 hours to get to work one way? He's a lot less free than if Roy Blunt came in and put that bridge in the way it's being done now, the way it should be done. There's a little, obviously, when you're talking about a bridge of that magnitude, there's a little construction delays. But you'd have had the entire mid part of this country totally backed up. And Roy Blunt, and you never thank folks for stuff you didn't do. But if the old boy 4 hours, let's say Roy Blunt left office 2 years ago, the old boy sitting in that traffic jam, I'll bet you he'd have loved him some Roy Blunt. come and get him out of there.
And you make great points as usual, but the who will build the roads debate will have to wait for another time. Scott Faughn, publisher of the Missouri Times. You can read it at MissouriTimes.com. We'll see you on Monday night at the roast. Scott, thanks for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks so much. It's just so great to have you here, and just congratulations again, Austin. It just as a viewer, it just looks so great. I'm just so happy for you.
Well, it looks great because of the generous space that you provided. Thank you, Scott. And thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. You can text us. What did you think of our interview with Scott? At 573-319-1586. That text line again, 573-319-1586. When we get back, a little bit of weird news this week. It is Friday, so let's get freaky. And then my brother, Austin Petersen, joins us at 8:30 this morning Central Time to talk about the pointless standing ovation. All that and more on the Wake Up America show at the wakeupamericashow.com website. We'll be back.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Austin's wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you? I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupamericashow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul, made a big investment in chips just before Congress votes on a bill that would give $52 billion in subsidies and tax credits to the chip industry.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No.
And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. Do not come. Do not come.
Have you ever received a royalty payment from a company that you later oversaw money going to that company?
You know, I don't know as a fact, but I doubt it.
Well, here's the thing is, why don't you let us know?
And we're back. Thanks so much for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Glad to have you here. Have you enjoyed the show so far? Send us a text at 573-319-1586, and your text might get read on air. We just had a great interview with Scott Faughn, the publisher of the Missouri Times, and we've got more great interviews and content to go. My brother Justin Petersen will be joining us this morning at 8:35 here, about 10 minutes from now on the program. So don't miss that. We're going to talk to him about the pointless standing ovation, and we're also going to talk a little bit about cultural Marxism in the arts. Now, if you missed the show a little bit earlier, this is something that I thought that you guys might get a kick out of. This was on our house. I'm going to see if I can transition to this correctly over here. Not that one, but yeah, Twitter weirdness. Take a look at this. This is from my Twitter page. I posted this photograph yesterday of, if you can tell what that is, that's a hornet's nest that popped up on the Petersen house yesterday. Now, when I said popped up, some people were correcting me online. They were like, "Oh, you must not have looked in the corner of your house very often, because there's no way that just popped up overnight." My wife is sitting over here right now, kind of like shaking her head. What, did we not look in that corner? I mean, it seemed as if it popped up overnight. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's at the very front of our house, so I'm pretty sure that we had been, at least observing that corner somewhat. But yeah, so we got an earful yesterday from all of our friends who were responding to us on this one. I'm not sure if you can see my scroll. So I see the picture right here. Should I poke it? You could see right there. That one got a lot of responses as well. You can see my stick right there that's pointing at the hornet's nest. And but the most popular response from people were burn the house down. It's all you can do. I had to learn what bald-faced hornets were. Apparently, bald-faced hornets can recognize you, and they know who you are. And if you don't kill them all, then they'll come and kill you later. So another person decided to show the clip from The Office from the guy who. Let's see if I can get that clip to play or not. Let's check it out. No, it's not going to play because it doesn't like me this week. But we will get that picked up hopefully soon. One of the things that's the elements that's been missing from the show this week, and something that we hope to be adding very soon, is to have actual video interviews with guests, so that we actually will have them live on the screen, like a television interview. We haven't been able to master that. It's been a bit of a technical hurdle, the sound challenges and all that. And the hope is that I'll be able to hire someone soon, and I am hiring. It has been announced yesterday that I will be looking at hiring a full-time staffer, potentially part-time, possibly. But it would be great if we could get some applications from anyone who might be interested in working for me here in Jefferson City. You'd have to get up at the crack of dawn with me and come into this studio, be in here at 5 a.m. with me to help run the show. And you'd also be getting a lot of great experience doing video production, creative design, a lot of e-commerce work and things like that. When I posted the job posting yesterday, someone said, "This looks like 2 jobs." Well, it's actually more like 4 or 5 jobs. And right now I'm doing all of it. If you'd like to see me, if you'd like to work with me, you can send an application to work for the Wake Up America show by emailing me at austin@stonegatellc.com, AUSTIN at STONEGAITLLC.com. That's STONEGAITLLC.com. If you are interested in a career in media production, and you are a creative type but also technically savvy, can know your way around a computer, and if you have any experience with live streaming, obviously that would be helpful as well. But I can teach the right person pretty much anything as long as you're eager to learn. So if you or someone you know might be interested in working with the Wake Up America show and with me here in Jefferson City, please send us an email again at austin@STONEGAITLLC.com. That's austin@StoneGateLLC.com. And if you'd like to help contribute to the show, to help us to hire staff and to grow and expand, then please make a generous donation. Become a monthly subscriber to the Wake Up America show by going to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. And what I would like to ask from you right now, if you're enjoying the program and you'd like to see us get better, faster, stronger, harder, then please make a contribution and become a member of Peterson's Patriots today. For $17.76 a month, you can help us to hire staff, get better technical equipment, produce better content, to expand our reach, and to be cancel proof. If you become a member of Peterson's Patriots at $17.76 a month, you're going to get a 20% discount on the AP for Liberty shop, and you're also going to be entered in to win monthly prize drawings from the shop of free gifts from the AP4LibertyShop.com website. So go to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support, become a member of Peterson's Patriots today, and make your pledge to help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty around the country and around the globe. All right, we're going to go to a commercial break, but coming up next, my brother Justin Petersen with his debut appearance on the show. We'll be back with more Wake Up America Show with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit SaluteHeroes.org to learn more.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun. Thank you, Ben.
Enough yet? Do facts no longer matter? Are lies to be encouraged instead of punished? This is not our inheritance. If truth no longer matters, we will not remain free for long. This is our generation's challenge, to defend our founders' hope that we the people could self-govern if we defend our right to get the facts. And right now, we're building the only defense of free people have, the facts, on every politician, every position they held, every statement they've made, every vote they've made, and any cash they've taken. It's the real history on those now pandering for your vote. There are hundreds of young people building our defense right now, and they need your help. We all have our passions, but as our ancestors knew, when events become so foul they threaten us all, we must stand and defend each other. Please, have our backs. Join us at votesmart.org.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? You can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
It's me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
As the world faces the challenges of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Lions recognize that kindness matters now more than ever. And Lions and Leos are finding ways to continue to serve our communities, including ordering food delivery for healthcare workers, holding story time for children online, and providing surgical masks to medical professionals and first responders. Empowering us to do more, Lions Clubs International Foundation has provided nearly $2.5 million in grant funding for COVID-19 relief. And that support continues to grow. For more than 100 years, in times of need, Lions always find a way to help those around them. And after we emerge from this, we will be stronger than ever. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Wake Up America Show with Austin Petersen. I am Austin, and you are watching the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We are streaming live on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and at wakeupAmericaShow.com. My next guest I'm so excited to introduce to you for his debut appearance on the Wake Up America Show is my brother. He's a music expert, and he's joining us right now on the phone. Good morning, Justin. How are you, friend?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, congratulations on your first week.
Yes, thank you.
And I also have to say here a plug. Congratulations to your amazing wife, who has been by your side, helping you with all of this stuff as well. I know she's kind of behind the scenes, but I'm loving seeing her on the commercials. So both of you guys are doing a great, amazing job.
Well,
congrats.
Thank you very much. Stephanie has been by my side through this whole process, supporting me the whole way. And, it's definitely there was a lot of fear, leaving a full-time job to go and work for myself. But, whenever I felt stressed or anxiety, I had my wife who was there for me to help me feel better. And, you certainly couldn't ask for a better partner in life. So thank you for thanking her.
Awesome.
Justin,
everything we want in life is on the other side of fear, brother.
That's right, boy. Good point. Good point. Justin, before we get into the topic of the standing ovation, which I'm, looking forward to discussing with you as somebody who, we both have a background in the performance arts. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some comments that you were making yesterday about this, cultural Marxism in the arts and the push for the desire for censorship on behalf of the left. You consider yourself a classical liberal. Before you didn't used to have to qualify that, but now you kind of do. But what is this coming from, the censorious? I mean, censorship has always been something that has happened to people in the arts, but it seemed as if it always came from more the puritanical right, like the fundamentalist Christians who were, the Jerry Falwell area. What has changed about the left?
Honestly, well, I don't think it's a surprise that the entertainment world. Okay, so first of all, let me back up. People who are performers or artists or creatives tend to rank very high in openness, right? So there's a big 5 personality test that everybody can take it, and it sort of measures 5 different levels of personality. Liberal people tend to be really high on openness. Conservative people tend to be less high. So that's what attracts liberals more to the arts. So people who are on the left tend to gravitate towards books, theater, music, ideas, things like that. So that kind of makes people liberal by dint of just their personality types. People who are in the arts are also very extroverted and are also, very agreeable in some ways, and in some ways are very empathetic. So, it used to be that the theater or the arts world was kind of like sticking it to the man, right? The idea was like, we're going to show all these, organizations. Yeah, we're going to fight the man, right? This was very much the hippies, right, of the '60s, right? Don't trust anybody, over 35 was what they used to say.
Right.
But, it's hard to say. I think there's, several things. Job security is a big thing for the performing arts. So when you're living in a sort of a monoculture of ideas and a monoculture of political beliefs, to express any kind of dissent is to become the tall poppy, right, and to stick out. And so a lot of people in the arts keep their mouths shut in order to keep their job, much more than in other sectors, as you can probably imagine. So I think many people who go along with it probably just give lip service to it in many ways, and they don't agree with it. I know that's something I'm finding a lot, because when I can sit down and have conversations with actual actors, performers, singers, dancers, teachers, whatever, people, they get around to common sense and ideas, and they go, oh yeah, but you kind of have to sit down with them and get them out of the Borg, right, and have an honest conversation with them. So I think they're I've said this a lot about what's going on with the woke. The woke use our desire to be good and to be seen as good as the entry point for the virus of their ideas. It plays on our natural desire to be good, to be seen as empathetic, to be seen as a caring individual. And the arts, by and large, in history, has proven itself to be the bastion of a place where people do care about other people and take care of other people. So, yeah, I think that's some of the reasons why these ideas come in, right?
So speaking about,
I also think a lot of artists don't have an idea of what it is to make art. They've confused art with performance.
Explain that.
Well, all artists have to really think about the culture in which they live and what's going on in the culture and how they're going to position themselves in the art making world, and ask themselves deep questions. And this is very philosophical and can go on. I could talk about this for hours, but what is the purpose of art? What is its main intent? And I think in our modern time, we have perverted that. And art has become two things. Art has become propaganda, which is the art of fear and scaring people. And the other side of the coin is art as pornography. And I don't mean like pornography like on, Debbie Does Dallas. What I'm talking about is anything that sort of creates desire, right? That creates this unhealthy sort of desire. So art is something to me, as someone who's, considered this and thought about this, art is something that's supposed to take us out of the here and now. It's supposed to connect us with the human experience. And that goes beyond politics. That goes beyond sex. That goes beyond gender. That goes beyond sexual orientation. That goes beyond race. That is the place where we can all stand together and share a common experience. And I think that's its value. But when people sort of use art to pervert itself into propaganda or to control, then it really isn't art anymore. It stops being art. It becomes something else. I mean, even Noel Coward, who was a famous British playwright in the 1930s and 40s, was saying that he didn't want to go to theatrical performances that felt like a political pamphlet. And this was Noel Coward. I mean, he was a gay, writer, and he was like, no, the politics has no place in the theater. That used to be the prevailing feeling in the 1930s and 40s during the beginning of the golden age of theater.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to my brother, Justin Petersen. Justin is a music expert. He's got a master's degree in vocal performance, and he and I both grew up, on the stage. He's a terrific singer. And Justin, I'd like to switch topics just a little bit, speaking about the arts here, about the standing ovation. And, about 2 months ago, Stephanie and I went to St. Louis stages to go and see Karate Kid the musical, which I can tell you, which you would expect to be bad. I can tell you, it
wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off.
Yeah,
I can see it now.
Pretty much, yeah. That was it. If they had you doing that, it would have been a great show. But unfortunately, they didn't. So it was just okay. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was good. Definitely wasn't great. But at the end of the show, we're getting there to the curtain call and stuff. And the performers did a fine enough job with what they had to work with. But I'm just like rolling my eyes, and because here comes all the mindless peons just standing up, giving everybody a standing ovation. Has the standing ovation sort of become the participation trophy? Because it seems like it's been going on since we were kids, but there was a time when a standing ovation actually meant something, right?
Oh, it was a big deal, standing ovation. I would recommend to your listeners and viewers that if you want to watch an incredible history of theater, you'll do nothing better than find this guy named, I don't know if it's Robert McKay. His last name is McKay, but the documentary is called Broadway: The History of the Golden Age. And in this documentary, Stephen Sondheim talks about how the theater had changed over the course of the 20th century and got more and more expensive. How it just became really cost prohibitive over the years. And what Stephen Sondheim said, which I think is so brilliant, he said, when people go to the show, they're not ovating the show. They're ovating each other. it's a kind of a form of cultural self-masturbatory, tradition. So like, oh, look at us, look how good we all are for being at this show.
That's interesting.
It's a self-congratulatory act.
We're also cultural. Look at us.
Look how great we are.
Look how great we are. We went and saw a play tonight. Aren't we cool?
Right. Well, what's funny is that if people went to more shows, they probably wouldn't stand as much. So my thought is that if people went to see more theater and they saw more, had more exposure to good theater, they would be able to distinguish between what's very good and what's exceptional. But because people don't go to theater very often, anytime they go, it is an event, right? They've paid a lot of money to go. So it's sort of like, yes, we're going to get the most out of this event. And that's a shame. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why people, stand for so long for these shows, because they want to feel like they did something. They made a contribution to the night, that they were there. They were part of this. They're saying, I was here. I was here. So, yeah.
Yeah,
people would do more. And I think they would get a better, that's what culture and taste is, right? I mean, culture and taste is an exposure to things, right? It's being able to sit down with a bunch of wine and go, oh, this is crap. Oh, this is really good. And find out why. Instead of just being like, Franzia is the best. I
wonder what our audience thinks. Send us a text 573-319-1586. Again, the text line is open at 573-319-1586. We're speaking to my brother, Justin Petersen. Now, Justin, when it comes to like the participation trophy, I mean, like as a theater performer, being, if you get a standing ovation, it means a lot less to you as well. But I mean, the arts have changed so much that it's, and I haven't been in a musical theater production for, it's been well over a decade at this point, Justin. But I mean, you being still in touch with the arts, can you say that the attitudes of performers have changed a lot in the last decade or so?
I mean, the pandemic was a very interesting experience insofar as watching how performers were so willing to sort of just fold and give up their job for the pandemic. They just didn't they had no fight in them. And then when the sort of mandates came through, it was like, kind of gross to see how people were turning on each other in the industry. So,
talk about that.
Yeah, it's been really, actors who can't get roles now if they're not vaccinated. And it's part of the hiring process now.
Wow.
Clifton Duncan is an incredible actor who moved to Atlanta. He's got a big, cool, sizable social media presence, and he's been talking about this throughout the duration. But you can't get work, right? You won't be able to get a job if you elect to not be vaccinated, or you don't want to get the boosters or whatever. You just won't get hired.
It's crazy. Justin, there's an actor. His name is Sean Bean. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he played Boromir in Lord of the Rings, and Alec Trevelyan in 007, Game of Thrones. He was one of the main characters, and he was getting ripped apart online because he was talking about the new handlers that they have for sex scenes in films, where there's.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard about this phenomenon?
Well, I mean, I know that they have done this with theater, where you have a consensual sort of a person who helps to make sure everyone's comfortable.
Well, okay, so I want to talk to you about this. I got to go to a commercial break first, though, Justin. Okay. Would you be able to stick around through me with a commercial break?
Yeah,
we'll finish out the show together. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to go to a commercial break. When we get back, we're going to talk about sex handlers in Hollywood with my brother, Justin Petersen. Yeah, on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We'll be back.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bullshit. This is my Diddy's website. Now I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bullshit is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bullshit is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Didi made Frenchy Bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Dee Dee really likes it. Dee Dee said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake. Yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes. You like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchie Bullshit. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchie Bullshit blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
The real-world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning. Time to rise in freedom. I'm Austin Petersen here on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Thanks so much for sticking around with us. We're glad to have my guest, Justin Petersen, my brother, sticking around. Good morning, Justin. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for staying around with us. You were telling me a story during the break. So we were talking about standing ovations, about a certain standing ovation from history. You want to share this story?
Yeah, it made me think. These ovations made me think of a story from the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which I encourage everyone to read. If you want to read, a firsthand account of the totalitarian state that was Russia, you'll find no better text than that. But he talks about this conference that was a tribute to Stalin, and everybody stood up, and for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, people just kept applauding, and people were getting tired, and who's going to be the first to stop, right? So another guy got up. It was a local paper factory director, and he just kept going. He was like, I'm going to go for it. And he kept going 9 minutes, 10 minutes, 11 minutes. I mean, even the people that love Stalin were like, okay, this is really ridiculous. But what happened was that finally this factory owner, he just kind of sat down, and then everybody stopped. So like everybody in the room just went, okay, we're off the hook. But then what happened was that the KGB or whatever arrested this man, and they put him for 10 years into a camp because
he was the first one to sit down,
first one to stop clapping. Exactly.
Wow.
And that's what they told him as part of his interrogation. His interrogator said, "Don't ever be the first to stop applauding." And chilling,
scary
right?
Stuff.
Very chilling stuff.
Scary stuff, Justin.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It's amazing though that the left has not learned the lessons of the Soviet Union and that they paper over it. That the crimes and terrorism committed by and genocides committed by the Soviet government is just papered over.
I come at this to add to that point. I come at this, and I'm going to sound like somebody right on Fox News. Like, oh my gosh. But, American history has not been whitewashed. That's a claim that you hear a lot, like, oh, everything's been whiteified, right? It has not been whitewashed. It's been redwashed. We aren't learning about the atrocities of communism in our country. And I think there's a deliberate reason why we don't know about things like the Cultural Revolution in China or the atrocities of Mao.
They don't teach us that. They don't teach us that.
They only teach us, Hitler's stuff, but we don't hear about the communist revolution. We don't hear about the Russian Revolution. And I think that's intentional.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is too. Fascinating history there too for those who would learn about it. Struggle sessions and what.
Oh yeah, it's sort of. When you see people today that say things like, "We need to have a dialogue about X, Y, Z," they don't mean dialogue. They mean monologue, and they mean struggle session. They mean a re-education session. Right? Because there's no dialogue. I've sat in on these things where people have been called out on the carpet, and when the person begins to defend themselves, they get called all kinds of. They're told to be quiet, sit down. That's not a dialogue. A dialogue is not telling your opponent or your interlocutor to shut up. That's not a dialogue.
You say you sat in on one of these things before. What do you mean?
Yeah. There was a woman who wrote a book, and this was a musical theater book, and she got in trouble for words that she had used in the book that referred to the 60s as a racist and intolerant period of time. And she used descriptors that some people took offense with. And they called her on the carpet, and she got called into this session and, wanted to be a good ally and just got berated in a struggle session for an hour and a half. It was really the most cringing, terrifying, chilling thing I've ever seen. And finally, she had to divest herself of her own company and give it over to other people, as you've seen in these coffee shops. They're like, "Give us the company," right? Which is basically what they wanted.
Well, they're seizing the means of theater production.
That's right. It's funny, and I'm going to say this. Oh God, here comes another Fox News talking point. To seize the means of production, you have to produce something, Austin. If you do not produce, there is nothing to seize. So these people that are seizing the means of production while they do not produce anything, it's hysterical to me.
But I was told that after the revolution that I would be able to write poetry for the Green Revolution.
Right.
No.
Right. Here's your shovel, comrade.
Yeah, face the wall. Justin, This was a great interview. We didn't get to talk about the sex stuff. We will definitely do it because, we're going to have to.
So disappointed.
We'll definitely have you back on the show, Justin. You've done a great job. You're a great brother. Thank you so much for joining us the first week here on this program. It's certainly been a delight, and I love you very much.
I love you too. Have a great weekend. You better celebrate.
Oh, we're going to celebrate.
Fun for yourself.
That's right. Jefferson City's going to be rocking. Don't come a knocking tonight. Thank you so much, Justin. Love you, brother. Thank you very much. Bye. Who wants to meet us downtown here in Jefferson City tonight for a drink? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Thank you so much for being a part of the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. It's certainly been an exciting week as we've kicked off our first week. There have been a few technical challenges here and there, but I've been slowly getting better at pushing all of the right buttons. But hopefully we'll be able to hire someone soon, an assistant to come in here and create more jobs for freedom lovers. Maybe it could be you. If you're interested in working for the Wake Up America show and you're tech savvy, send us an email at austin@stonegatellc.com. And if you think that what we did here this week is promising, and you'd like to see us create more content, create more shows like this, maybe even build our own little network, you can be a part of that by becoming a monthly sponsor, a donor, by going to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. You can make a one-time donation to the show, and we'd certainly be grateful. What we really would love people to do is become a member of Peterson's Patriots and sign up to become a monthly contributor at $17.76 a month. You're going to get a 20% discount off of the shop at AP for Liberty shop, and you are also going to be entered in to win prize drawings. So please do that today. Make a generous contribution to the show to help us to hire more people, to make this show even better, and to come to you every Monday through Friday. Make us cancel proof. Thank you so much to my wife, Stephanie Petersen. Thank you so much to my good friend Scott Faughn for donating this space, to Camelia Petersen for always being there when I need her, my brother, Justin Petersen, my dad, John Petersen, and to all of the community people who have supported this show, Edie Vogel, Tony Allegra, Verna Cole, my mother-in-law, who made a generous donation as well. All of the good people who have stepped up and helped me to make my dreams come true. I'm so grateful to you, because it shows that not only do you support me, but you support the cause of freedom, which is what I believe in and is what I will continue to fight for every Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central on the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We'll see you on Monday.
It's morning again in America. Our country is prouder and stronger and better.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.